Were you surprised by the reaction?
The reaction definitely was a surprise, but it was, I love jeans. All I wear are jeans.
Sydney Sweeney has always been the internet's favorite contradiction, a small-town girl with old Hollywood looks who somehow became a Gen Z meme queen. But lately, the love affair between Sydney and the internet has hit a wall. And it all started with a pair of jeans. A few weeks ago, American Eagle released their new campaign featuring Sydney staring dreamily into the camera while a voiceover says, "Genes are passed down from parents to offspring. My genes are blue." The ad was meant to be a cheeky play on words. Jeans, as in denim, and genes, as in DNA. But instead of selling pants, it sparked one of the strangest pop culture debates of 2025. Comment sections exploded overnight. People accused the brand of pushing eugenics-coded imagery, blonde hair, blue eyes, and a script that sounded like it was ripped from a dystopian biology textbook. Some viewers called it tone-deaf, others called it downright sinister. And caught in the center of it all was Sydney Sweeney, the face of the campaign, the supposed blue jeans girl, and the internet's newest punching bag. What's wild is that this wasn't the first time Sydney found herself in this kind of firestorm. For years, she's walked this fine line between Hollywood sweetheart and political Rorschach test. Every move she makes says something different to everyone watching. But the American Eagle ad wasn't just another celebrity controversy, it was a turning point. A mirror reflecting how weird, divided, and image-obsessed pop culture has become. And for the first time, people started asking, has the internet finally fallen out of love with Sydney Sweeney? Before she became the internet's favorite controversy, Sydney Sweeney was its favorite obsession. When Euphoria dropped, her character Cassie became the blueprint for a new kind of vulnerability, emotional, messy, and almost painfully human. The crying in the bathroom scene, the mirror monologue, the pink robe, she wasn't just acting. She was being watched, and people loved her for it. For a while, Sydney wasn't seen as just another blonde in Hollywood. She was the girl everyone wanted to protect. Online spaces treated her like the patron saint of soft girl breakdowns, someone who could cry mascara tears and still look like she walked out of a Lana Del Rey lyric. When she revealed she liked fixing cars, fans rushed to defend her from sexist trolls. When she said she felt comfortable shooting her more vulnerable scenes in Euphoria, the internet praised her confidence and control. She became this symbol of empowerment, proof that being beautiful didn't mean you couldn't also be self-aware. It's funny looking back now, because everything that used to make people love Sydney is exactly what they're turning on her for. The femininity that once felt liberating now reads as performative. The confidence that once made her seem in control now makes her seem detached. Back then, Sydney represented a fantasy, the idea that you could be complicated and adored at the same time. But fame has a shelf life. And as the internet would soon remind her, love online always comes with an expiration date. Every celebrity has that one moment, the first crack in their perfect internet image. For Sydney Sweeney, it wasn't a scandal she caused on set or a bad interview quote, it was a birthday party. In 2022, photos surfaced from her mom's 60th hoedown-themed birthday. Think cowboy hats, denim, and red MAGA caps in the background. A few guests were even rocking Blue Lives Matter shirts. The internet did what it does best, zoomed in, screenshot, and spiraled. Suddenly, Sydney's family party became a political Rorschach test. Sydney responded on Twitter, saying it was an innocent celebration, and people were making assumptions. But she never actually said what those assumptions were. She didn't denounce the MAGA imagery, just asked people to chill. And that silence said more than any PR statement ever could. To her fans, it felt like the first time she broke the unspoken agreement. You're supposed to be one of us. The girl they had defended for being misunderstood was now the girl who didn't want to clarify anything. Meanwhile, the internet's other side, the right-wing dudes who worship unproblematic blondes, started celebrating her. They called her the last real woman in Hollywood. Memes, subreddits, think pieces. They crowned her their Aryan goddess. And that's where the shift began. The girl once protected from misogyny became the girl quietly idolized by it. Sydney didn't change overnight, but the way people looked at her did. From that point on, every role, every outfit, every campaign came with baggage she didn't ask for, but couldn't seem to escape. By 2024, Sydney Sweeney was sitting in a weird limbo. Too famous to be relatable, but too controversial to be adored. Her career was still thriving on paper. New films, Euphoria Season 3 on the way, luxury fashion deals. But then she did something that made everyone collectively tilt their heads like a confused dog. A collab with Dr. Squatch. Yes, the soap brand for men who think using 3-in-1 shampoo is a personality trait. The ad? Sydney selling a limited edition soap allegedly made with her bathwater. At first, people thought it was satire, maybe a cheeky nod to the infamous Belle Delphine stunt from 2019. But no, it was real. And that's what made it even weirder. For someone who was once a rising A-lister, this kind of gimmicky, meme-level marketing felt like a step down. Critics called it gooner bait. Fans called it sad, and Kayla says in her breakdown pointed out something interesting, that this wasn't just a misstep, it was a symptom. A sign that Sydney was leaning into the very male gaze that had once made her famous, but this time with full self-awareness. And that's what confused people most. It wasn't that she was sexual. She's always been confident in her body. It's that she seemed to be marketing to the internet's worst corners. Like she'd stopped trying to please her original fans and started cashing in on the ones who fetishized her. This wasn't Sydney Sweeney, the actress. It was Sydney Sweeney, the brand. And the brand didn't seem to care what it said, as long as people were still watching. Then came the ad, a simple American Eagle campaign. Sydney Sweeney in denim, soft lighting, and a tagline that would go on to break the internet. Genes are passed down from parents to offspring. My genes are blue. If you heard it without context, you might have thought it was just bad copywriting, but the internet heard something else. The line, meant to be a playful pun, landed like a political grenade. Suddenly, Sydney wasn't modeling genes anymore. She was allegedly promoting eugenics. Commenters pointed out how the ad framed her blue eyes and blonde hair like inherited superiority. Others compared it to vintage Calvin Klein ads that sexualized underage models, and wondered why we were going backward in 2025. To make it worse, American Eagle marketed the campaign as part of a domestic violence charity initiative, but never made that the focus. So instead of raising awareness, the campaign just looked tone-deaf and weirdly self-congratulatory. Even people who didn't buy the fashy-coded theory said the ad felt off, like an AI-generated parody of white American beauty ideals. It wasn't subtle, it was uncanny. The internet's reaction was split. Half of it mocked the outrage, half of it dissected every frame like they were solving a conspiracy. And right in the middle of that digital storm was Sydney Sweeney, silent, unbothered, and looking more like a symbol than a person. Because at that point, it didn't even matter what the ad meant. What mattered was what people wanted it to mean, and that's how Sydney's image, once a meme, then a muse, became a mirror for the internet's weirdest culture war. When the great genes had dropped, it stopped feeling like an ad and started feeling like a Rorschach test for modern culture. To some, it was harmless, a corny play on words that only the chronically online could turn into a war crime, but to others, it was something darker. The shot composition, the blonde hair, the tone, it all felt intentional, like a subtle wink toward the aesthetic of purity that fashion left behind decades ago. Kayla says described it as fashy-coded, and that phrase stuck, because it perfectly captured the uneasiness people couldn't explain. American Eagle, a brand once known for inclusivity and body positivity, suddenly felt like it had stepped into a time machine set to 2003. Rail-thin models, whitewashed visuals. A total vibe shift from what Gen Z had been celebrating, and maybe that's why the reaction hit so hard. This wasn't just about Sydney, it was about what she represented. She was the face of a campaign that felt like a regression. A sign that fashion and media were quietly moving back toward whiteness, thinness, and traditional femininity. Still, others argued that the backlash was overblown, that the internet is addicted to outrage, and that every brand misstep doesn't have to be decoded like a secret manifesto. But that's the thing about dog whistles. They're designed to sound innocent to most people and deeply specific to a few. Whether or not the ad meant anything at all, it revealed one uncomfortable truth. People were no longer just looking at Sydney Sweeney, they were reading her. The Great Jeans controversy didn't happen in a vacuum. It landed right in the middle of a bigger cultural shift that Kayla says calls the aesthetic slide to fascism. It's not that everyone suddenly turned political, it's that politics turned aesthetic. Everywhere you look, the algorithm is pushing soft-focus nostalgia. Women dressed like it's 1959, grainy filters, lace aprons, captions about feminine energy. The tradwife aesthetic rebrands regression as romance. And Sydney, whether she means to or not, fits perfectly into that visual. The blonde hair, the soft lighting, the quietness. She's the kind of image conservative men point to when they say, see, not every woman has to be political. Kayla compared Sydney's campaign to the new wave of female pop culture figures cosplaying femininity as protest. JoJo Siwa in pearls singing about domesticity one day, posting raunchy snap stories the next. Jessie Murph performing 1960s housewife fantasies while selling empowerment as merch. It's like everyone's in on the bit, but no one knows who's joking anymore. The line between irony and ideology has completely blurred. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's a symptom of online fatigue. People nostalgic for a world that never existed. But when that nostalgia starts echoing fascist imagery, even unintentionally, it gets weird fast. And that's where Sydney's problem really lies. She's not the villain of this story. She's just the perfect face for a cultural mood swing, the kind of blank canvas everyone can project their version of the past onto, even if that past never actually existed. The weirdest part about all of this? Sydney barely said a word. While the internet was dissecting her every frame like a cultural crime scene, she stayed quiet. No statements, no Notes app apologies, not even a repost of the charity link American Eagle claimed the ad was tied to. Just silence. And that silence became its own kind of statement. In a world where every celebrity is expected to perform moral clarity online, Sydney's refusal to play the game made her look either refreshingly authentic or suspiciously complicit, depending on who you asked. To her fans, she was just staying out of the noise. To her critics, she was hiding behind it. But maybe it's both, because the truth is, Sydney Sweeney doesn't really stand for anything. And that's kind of her brand. She's not Taylor Swift, who learned the hard way that silence creates a vacuum others will fill for you. She's not Zendaya, who carefully curates activism into her image. Sydney's whole appeal is that she's apolitical by default, the kind of celebrity you can project anything onto. That used to be a strength, now it's a liability. Kayla summed it up perfectly. It's not about what Sydney does, it's about what she doesn't do. The fact that she keeps ending up in controversies that seem to say something, even when she says nothing, shows how much culture has changed. In 2025, silence isn't neutral anymore, it's a choice. And whether Sydney means it or not, her silence keeps saying the loud part quietly. After weeks of backlash, Sydney finally broke her silence. Not with a tweet, not with a statement, but in an interview with GQ. And her response? It was pure Sydney, calm, detached, and completely unbothered. When asked if she was surprised by the outrage, she laughed lightly and said, "The reaction definitely was a surprise, but I love jeans. All I wear are jeans." It was the kind of answer that sounds innocent until you realize how perfectly it sidesteps everything. She went on to say, "I know who I am. I know what I value. I know that I'm a kind person. I don't really let other people define who I am." To some, that sounded confident, even refreshing. A reminder that not every celebrity owes the internet a dissertation about a marketing campaign they didn't write. But to others, it read as tone deaf. Another example of how she refuses to acknowledge the deeper cultural conversations she keeps landing in the middle of. Sydney framed it like personal growth. She's still learning, taking it day by day and finding strength in ignoring the noise. And maybe she really means that. Maybe she's just tired of explaining herself to people who already decided who she is. But it also reinforces what makes her so polarizing. The idea that she's living in a different dimension from the rest of the internet. The version of Sydney in that GQ interview doesn't seem defensive or angry. She seems above it. And that's the thing about Sydney Sweeney. She's not trying to control the narrative anymore. She just doesn't care if you get it. At this point, Sydney Sweeney has become less of a person and more of a prism. Whatever you already believe about fame, beauty, or privilege, you'll find it reflected back at you through her. To her fans, she's still the same soft-spoken girl from Euphoria who worked her way up in an industry built to chew women like her alive. To her critics, she's the embodiment of tone-deaf Hollywood, someone who benefits from every system she claims not to notice. And to brands, she's a perfect face for whatever sells. Vulnerability, desire, nostalgia, even controversy. That's the irony. Sydney Sweeney didn't fall from grace because she did something wrong. She fell because the culture around her changed. We're in a moment where audiences crave authenticity, but also demand symbolism. We want our celebrities to mean something even when they don't. Kayla's right. This isn't really about jeans or MAGA hats or bathwater soap. It's about what happens when the internet's favorite muse stops performing morality and just keeps being normal. In a culture addicted to outrage, neutrality feels like defiance. Maybe Sydney's downfall isn't a scandal, it's a misunderstanding. She keeps doing what she's always done, but the audience she built doesn't see it the same way anymore. And maybe that's the point. Fame used to be about being adored. Now it's about surviving the interpretation of yourself. Sydney Sweeney might not have lost the internet's love. Maybe the internet just outgrew the version of her it created.